Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 450 chainsaw. The customer complaint is that the chain keeps falling off. Well, usually what happens is the chain stretches, gets loose, and falls off. Reasons for that might include that it's not oiling. Most common cause of it not oiling is that the oil feed hole in the bar is plugged up. But we look at this bar and we can see that that hole is actually clear. So we're going to want to see if it's pumping oil or not. Let's get this chain off of here and take a closer look at what we got going on. I mean, the clutch drum spins normal. There's nothing to suggest that the worm gear is jacked up. There is a hole in the chain guide plate. Dirt and debris are getting behind that and getting up into the oil pump area. And there was some debris in the oil feed tube there. I don't think that the debris in the oil feed tube is an issue. You know, the hole in the bar was clean. Let's see what he's got in the tank for oil. Cap's kind of tight here. There's oil in it, and it looks like it's bar oil. It doesn't look like it's waste oil or anything like that. I didn't really look down in the tank to look for debris, but we'll get to that. Let's see if this thing's oiling or not. So you could see some movement of oil at the discharge hole, but it wasn't really pumping oil. It was just kind of burbling and gurgling the oil that was sitting in the tube. It wasn't pushing any more oil up and out the hole. I'm going to pop this clutch off of here. It's reverse threads. You'll note that, I have a warm engine here. If I didn't hit the kill switch, it could have started the engine, even if it would start it backwards. So our worm gear, that didn't look too bad, but look at all the debris that's behind the worm gear. I'm just checking the pinion gear on the pump right now to make sure it turns free. And it seems to turn all right. I think I see some wear on it though. Yeah, let's try and clean this up a little bit and take a closer look. The pump pinion turns free, and you can even see movement at the end of the discharge hose when I was turning it. So any oil that's in that hose right now is, the pump is able to move it. I think the problem is the oil's not getting to the pump decent. One screw holds this chain guide plate in place. Kind of lost the screw there. Off comes the plate. And you see, because it has that hole in it, all the debris that can get behind that plate, which isn't so great because it can jam up in the pump. So the pump, it's a simple two-piece unit, but it seems to work. But there's our tank vent, and it is full of schmutz. If that oil tank can't vent, then, we're going to create a vacuum in there as the pump tries to pull oil out. And eventually the vacuum will be greater than what the pump can pull, and it'll starve the pump for oil. That's a good possibility that was also part of our problem. So we've cleaned things up behind here a little bit. Here's our worm gear. Pump pinions, they might call it. That looked pretty decent. Our drum drives that pinion. Nothing wrong with the fingers on the end of the drum that drive the pinion. There's a piece of string or hair or something wrapped up in there. We pop this pump out. The discharge hose comes with it. And that's the feed hole from the tank. And, you know, I should see oil running out of there right now. It's not really running out. It's not even trickling out. I can pump some air in through the tank vent, pressurize the tank, and I can get a little bit more movement of oil, but it's not really what I was expecting to see by putting air pressure in that tank. So on a lot of units, there's a rubber hose that runs into the oil tank, and there's a pickup screen on the end of that hose. On this model, there's just a screen in the bottom of the tank between the tank and the pump. We want to take a look at that screen. This is a locating pin. You'll notice that it's not threaded all the way to the end. That's how you can identify it. We'll remove our chain catch. Now, in order to access this screen or filter, you know, ideally you would take the tank off to get better access to it, but it takes a lot of time. So I've got these pliers. I think they're European muffler clamp pliers. And when I squeeze them, they open the jaws on the end, and then there's a lock that holds the jaws in place. And this works good for spreading two halves apart and then being able to gain access. That round gray piece there with the raised boss on it, that's our screen that we're trying to get out. And it's kind of just in there with a half a turn and a little catch that latches it under there. I can't quite get to it yet, so we're going to take the screws out of this handle. Yeah, I don't know why it helped, because it didn't look like the handle moved on the tank at all, but I got it spread farther apart. That should be plenty of room to get in there. I like to use a flat-faced pliers, like this one, nice and square and flat. And I can reach in there and grab that little raised boss on that plug and wiggle it till it breaks loose, and then give it that quarter turn it needs. And then to get it out, it's going to have to be turned 90 degrees. You can see there's a 90-degree shape to it. So this doesn't really look like it's plugged up. I didn't really hold it still very long. There might have been a little bit of debris on it. But I'm cleaning it off. We'll take another look at it. You can see there's some small holes in it where the oil goes through before it feeds the pump. And I'm going to want to seal that piece back on there. So I have to clean any oil residue from this sealing surface here. It doesn't come from the factory with an actual sealant on it. It's just a press fit that hopefully doesn't leak. I'm cleaning the screen itself. I want to get the oil residue off of that as well. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We're going to use Seal All for this. This product works pretty good. I know it's gasoline resistant. I'm sure it'll work fine for bar oil. I'm going to use a Q-tip for an applicator and just, you know, put it on the edge. I don't want to get any of this product where the oil can pick it up and drag it into the pump or plug up any holes or anything like that. So I'm not putting too much on there. That looks pretty good. Then we'll go in like 90 degrees and then drop it into place and give it our quarter turn. There's a little bit of a catch that it's supposed to go under. And a lot of times that catch is broken off of there. But there it is in place. I'm happy with that. I've done a lot of them like that. It'll be just fine. If it ever has to come back out, you just got to fight the sealant a little bit, but it'll come out. And it'll be easy to clean up. Alright, let's get our chain catch back on here. It's not in bad shape considering that he's been complaining about the chain coming off. Then our one locating pin. Then there's 2 screws for the handle. Cripes. Someone's been in here before. Both of those screws are supposed to be short screws. Happen to have one in my pocket. I don't know what happened, if they broke the handle at some point and replaced it with the wrong screw. Maybe there's a short screw on the other 2 handle screws on the other side. Who knows? If the long screw is in there, there's a chance of it poking through the fuel tank and up into the bottom of the oil tank. So here's our oil pump. The piece with the splines on it, that's the pinion. And you can see that there's some grooves in it. It's worn. Now maybe it's possible that our worm gear is slipping over the top of that where it's worn. So we're going to replace that pump pinion. Here's our new one. Piston pump. I guess I was calling it a pinion. I think the pinion is actually the worm gear. So we put a little bit of grease on the end of it just to lubricate it before it gets oil. That pin that locates the pump, you want to make sure that doesn't fall out during any of this. Sometimes that pin will fall out of there. And I'm going to put some grease on it. Here's our new chain guide plate. This will help keep it clean back here. And it'll help keep that schmutz out of the pump and out of the tank vent. Can only go on here one way, and then a single screw to hold it down into place. There we go. Alright, here's our worm gear. But we're going to replace it. We're going to put a new worm gear on here. Just because it's questionable whether or not the old one was any good or not. I'm going to put a little grease on this as well. And I want to get the grease on the inside where it runs on the end of the crankshaft. It spins on there real nice. Here's our clutch needle bearing. We'll lubricate that. Clutch drum. There's a bunch of oily mess inside the drum here. We're going to wipe that off. Looks like it turns on there real good. You just want to make sure that the drum is interlocked into the worm gear. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is just buzz that clutch on there a little bit. We don't have to get carried away because it's naturally going to tighten up once you start cutting with it. But I'm going to hold the starter rope out and hold the stop switch. Just give it a buzz. All right, that all looks good. Still has fuel in it. I don't know why I would think it didn't. And we're going to top off the bar oil right away. I kind of hesitated there for a minute, but we'll top it off. Once I've got this filled, we're going to see if this thing starts and runs, which I'm pretty sure it will. But we want to see if it oils or not. And if it does oil, then that's all I'm going to have for you. And the Husqvarna 450 chainsaw that needed some oil system maintenance. Thanks for watching. Later.